Here it is, the ComeUp winch, the Generation 2 Seal. Totally waterproof, designed to operate underwater winch. Made by ComeUp. And I got the 9.5 RSI with the remote and everything. I just unboxed it. And carefully took it out. Lifted it out of there. There it is. This thing is heavy. It's number 2 gauge wire. 6 feet long for the black and 6 feet long for the red. These 2 boxes here were the first that came out. Here's my manual remote with the basic remote. Out, in. And this box here had the manual, which I read. I took this out and I have it in my kitchen. I was sitting here reading it. It's in my kitchen table. Here's the bolts. Here's the fair lead. I bought this from eTrailer.com because they had the best price on it. And came with the little remote here. The wireless Bluetooth remote. And it's hooked with a pivoting shackle that's built into the end of it, where it's not a full swivel, but it sort of has some swivel action to it. Looks like a strong enough hook. Well, I can tell if I do get this winch in there, it's going to be a really tight fit. The stud sticking out on the come along fair lead barely leaves enough room. There's no room for no margin of space. And I can see that what I need to do first is guide in these cables before you fully install the winch, because you won't get them afterwards. So I need to guide these in, figure out how I'm going to place them first. Okay, so here's the problem I'm running into. The ComeUp winch instructions said to put the fair lead on like this with the Allen heads out, which actually looks a lot better as well. It also makes it so if you have to replace the fair lead, you don't have to take the winch out, theoretically. There's no room in here for this extra stud length that's on here. That stud sticking out after it's snugged down is not allowing this to fit. It's not, the feet aren't able to line up with these holes. It's pushing it back. I'm going to have to probably take out the washer too. I threw the washer in there. The original manual for the ComeUp winch doesn't show the fair lead having a washer back here. There's a washer and a lock washer in here. But if this was just forward 1/4 of an inch, I wouldn't have to do that. But I'm going to have to make do, so I'm going to grind this off. I'm going to use my hacksaw to make a mark while it's in position, and then take it over to my bench grinder and grind it off. So I actually got it installed last night. I tested it. It works pretty good. I didn't pull a heavy load with it. I just paid out the rope and pulled it in. And one thing I wish they put a one of those rubber ball protectors. So, because when I draw this in, I don't have this very tight. I have it gently snug, but I don't have it like wrenched in there super tight. But the metal thimble and the synthetic material is kind of pressing up against here a little bit. But I'm going to get something at the 4x4 parts store. And some tips here. the little square bolts, for those of you installing a ComeUp winch, there's these little square nuts that go on the bolts, and one of the nuts on this side right here in the front got jacked sideways while I was threading it in, and I was cranking on it, and I almost stripped it. I pulled it out, it got a little bit stripped, I flipped the nut over and I threaded it in properly. And the fair lead here, the nuts, I cut those off last night with a hacksaw. I held the very tip in with a vise and cut the tip off, cut like a 1/4 inch off, and did it on both sides, and then I ground it with a grinding wheel and kind of grounded a taper along the edge of the bolt on the leading edge so that I could thread it in easily. And I got a couple of threads that went past the nut, and I used a Loctite on there, so it should be working good. But yeah, it's hard getting the nuts in there. The little square nuts that are down in here, you can see the shiny silver color. That's one of the square nuts. They want to fall out of their little slot that they slide into. So I put a piece of tape over it, some painter's masking tape, a little piece on all 4 of them. And then when I was threading them, I realized once you feel like you're getting a bite, take the tape off and make sure they're aligned right and you don't have one cocked sideways, because if you do, you could misthread it and get a cross threading. So if you put tape over there to hold those on, take a little tool, and the tool I was using was a little, like a mechanics pick tool. You can also use an old dental pick. I actually got one of those. I use it for all kinds of stuff. And this is the one that got jacked sideways a little bit, and it started to misthread. And I wasn't watching what it was doing because I still had the tape over it. So once you thread your nuts up in there, I had to reach under here. This is a 4x4 Labs bumper, and I was threading it up in there and finally got it to bite. I put Loctite on those threads too, and what I used for Loctite was a Permatex No. 2 gasket sealant. And I've talked to airplane mechanics that actually use that stuff too. It's really good. It works as a good thread locker. It never completely dries. It stays kind of tarry and goopy, like a sappy glue that just never dies. It just stays on the threads and stays kind of like a tarry substance, and it works great as a thread locker. It gives you more time to assemble stuff, because if I use the blue or the red for the amount of time it took me to, I wouldn't use the red on these. I might want to work on this winch and I need to take it out. I don't, that would be crazy. How would I get a torch in there? But I think I've seen blue, once blue cracks, the blue thread locker, once it cracks, it comes loose, and it doesn't have any holding power. Once it cracks loose, it sort of loses its thread binding ability, whereas the Permatex No. 2 gasket sealer, that stuff, I'll show it to you. I got some in my non-hardening pliable sealant, and it works great on threads. I use it on all kinds of stuff, and I've never had one of these ever unscrew in high vibration applications. So yeah, so let me fire this thing up and I'll show you guys how it's been working. Okay, now so these winches have a start kill switch, start stop switch right here. And when it's firing up, it's got a battery indicator. Shows how much load is on the battery. And this is a Bluetooth indicator for the remote, the wireless remote. I also got a wired remote on this. It's right here. I tested it last night. That was the first thing I tested. And boy, was it hard to get on. And I had it right. There's a key slot right here. I had the key lined up properly. And I was putting it on, and it was just super tight fit. Never seen such a tight fit. And, it's all new and everything, so I didn't think I'd need any lube on it. But for some reason it takes a long time. I'm going to fire up this. So you hold the remote and you hold down on it for about 5 seconds. and the little light at the top of the handheld remote will start flashing. So there it is on green. I don't know why the little Bluetooth thing, it seems like it takes, that means it's pairing. It beeps like about 15 times. So yeah, it works. This is in, this is out. In is the arrow pointing towards you. There's an arrow right here. And the arrow pointing towards you when you're holding it properly in your hand like this means it brings the rope in to the winch, and the arrow pointing away from you takes it out. It even says in little words right here, in and out. It's pretty straightforward once you've used it once. It makes sense. You got to be careful when you're coiling it in, because the mechanics of the roller tend to glide. So after you release the button, it has a lot of momentum and torque, so it's still rolling in. So you always want to stop before you want the thing to really stop. So you got to stop early, let go of the button, because it'll just keep coasting in, and you'll end up breaking something if you're not careful. And same thing when it's going out. When it's going out, it coasts. The motor will keep turning after you release the button. It doesn't just start and stop instantaneously. And so yeah. I'll show you a little bit right here. It's got a little indicator thing with lights that show arrows going out from the center, going out like that show if the cable's going out. Pretty fancy, huh? And then it's got arrows going in. It's hard to do this with one hand with my iPhone. Anyways, so far I like this winch. It sure is heavy. Turn the kill switch off. So when I first powered this up, when it's syncing with the Bluetooth, it makes a lot of noise. And the guy told me at ComeUp Winch, they told me how to get rid of that noise. Is you got to fire this thing up first. Hold down for 5 seconds, then it turns green. And then turn this on. And then as soon as it turns on, winch out. And that shuts it off so it doesn't make all that noise. So that's a trick for that.